Hi, everybody. Happy New Year and welcome to another Chats with Chowdhury in our new year of 2020-21. I hope you've had a fantastic festive season. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by my guest, who is the president of Andrew Alliance, which is now a waters company. I have to put that in, Piero Zucchelli. And today we're going to be talking about the positives and learnings from 2020 and what the future trends and what 2021 and the future could hold for us. So, Piero, buongiorno and felici anno nuovo. I hope I pronounced it correctly.
Well, welcome everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, Rizwan.
Yeah, well, ironically, the last time you and I actually spoke face to face was almost a year ago
Yeah,
when
yeah.
you kindly gave me a tour at SLAS in
Yeah.
San Diego, and a lot has changed since then, hasn't it?
Absolutely. So it was the last show of the year for us, the first and the last one. And life was quite different from expected, but it's okay. It's great.
Right, right, brilliant. Well, before we start talking about looking back at 2020, perhaps for those people who are not familiar with Andrew Alliance, you could give them just a couple of lines, an overview of the business, and also your role within there now.
Absolutely. So Andrew Alliance was created precisely 10 years ago by myself and colleagues that wanted to help life science to grow and to automate and to provide new tools to the scientists. And so indeed was a long road. We make robots and software and tools for scientists. And indeed, this year was a very special one because you have to realize that we were acquired by Waters Corporation literally 1 year ago. So next week will be the anniversary. And then we went to SLS, Rizwan. And so it was really things that happened very rapidly, and a few weeks after we were all confined.
I know it's terrible, right? And your role as president, then, what is your role then as president?
Yeah, I have to say that before I was chairman of the board and CEO, so essentially I was driving all the strategic direction of the company. And my role is also to understand and interpret the needs of a larger corporation and of a field that is liquid chromatography and mass spectrometry, that is an immense field with a lot of demand and needs in automation, and essentially trying to guide Andrew Alliance, that is a special unit within Waters Corporation, to deliver the products and the tools that scientists need.
Fantastic. Well, let's look at 2020 then, which has been a
Yeah.
tumultuous year, a year like no other. And I'm going to ask you to describe it in one word. What word would you describe
No, I
2020?
started with words I cannot repeat here in public, because it was all, I'm saying, the year was I have to acknowledge, I was myself one of those that at the beginning I was not understanding. I was not even able to catch the size and the entity of the storm that was arriving. And so I started with words that were not, cannot be mentioned. But in fact, I came out by inventing a word that is LSIT, that is LSIT, because if you think about it, it's a year that has been completely dominated by two sciences. One is life science,
Yeah.
that not only invented the virus that was not known to humanity, but then it was so careful in propagating it everywhere, and now everybody know what the coronavirus is. It's probably a word as popular as Coca-Cola in the old times. And the aspect of IT is also quite interesting because I realized that if today you don't know Skype or Zoom or this kind of technologies, you are essentially an eremite. You are completely isolated. You cannot work. You cannot communicate. You cannot
Yeah.
see your families. And so I think these are really the two revolutions of the year, that we like it or not.
Right. Well, that's a very good point, actually. Very good. So let's move on then and saying, as a business,
Mhm.
obviously you just mentioned you had only just joined Waters or amalgamated with Waters in January.
Yeah.
Have you been able to still achieve the targets and objectives you set out with at the beginning of 2020 by the end of the year?
I'm happy to acknowledge both a weakness and a strength of Andrew Alliance that somehow are also reflected by my own personality or my own way of doing things. And you should be aware, by the way, people never acknowledge this, I'm very bad in planning. And so it is a weakness, of course, but sometimes it's a strength, because if you have a weakness, somehow you have to recover with other skills in order to take care of it. you know. And indeed, the capacity of reacting to change is something that we developed very strongly in EndroAlliance. And we were able to change very fast. And so this year, actually, business-wise, was a very good year. But for reasons that are completely different from the one we had forecasted and expected
Yeah,
and
sure.
planned. And so it was completely accidental, because as you may, labs had been closed. People was not going to the lab. And so it's where we understood that the strength of our products are connected devices. So devices you can connect by networks and control remotely was a big strength, but was a strength in different environments. For example, a strength in diagnostics or a strength in research labs that had to reorganize completely, having scientists working from home and technicians running experiments in the lab. So new ways of working that we didn't plan or anticipate, but at the final we were able to serve with our products that also evolved during the year.
Right. And you just talked about planning. So when did you actually start planning for the pandemic?
Probably not yet even. I'm saying, one of the strengths that probably again comes from the weakness is that simply we listen to customers. And so when customers start explaining the needs that they had and the problems that they had, we started adapting and modifying our products in such a way to better serve their needs. For example, we didn't have at the beginning of the year a formal sample management, and I think everybody can understand that in testing and in diagnostics, sample management and sample tracking is extremely important, and so that's the direction the products evolved into.
Right. Okay. And you already talked about obviously the skill sets that you and the business have always had in terms of adapting very quickly to change. So apart from that, what else did you already have in place which helped you adapt to the new world that the pandemic brought?
Yeah, it's probably again repeat myself because we are in the field of life science. That is probably one of the fields that require the more tools and more solutions, because I think it's probably difficult to realize even for the general public that life science went to a very different scale of collaboration. No, my background is in particle physics, where I remember scientists collaborating worldwide since 30 years ago, 40 years ago, even more probably. And it's my memory, but life science has done this step up these days, and we're seeing collaborations really globally and working on a time scale that was unprecedented. So I think that the other advantage is that even if you are known as a robotics company, we are a company which has a deep culture of IT and informatics. And I think this is really the tool that allowed us really to go through the pandemic, both professionally, but even personally, in a way that is unprecedented.
Right. And looking back, and you already said that obviously planning is not one of the strengths, but obviously now you're part of Walters. So what did you have to change to adapt? Because obviously you've got the skill sets to adapt very quickly, but was there anything you had to bring in which you didn't have before that then helped you with the changes which were required?
Yeah, specifically, we had a huge demand from diagnostic labs because it's interesting. Of course, automation exists in life science since ever, but suddenly they needed a different automation. And so that's probably the difference, again, in general terms, between robotics and automation. Automation is fixed and designed to automate a precise and dedicated process. But robotics is, again, very open. And this probably, again, reflects the lack of planning company. So we can easily adapt our systems. And so essentially, we've been covering all the workflows that you may imagine, going from the swabs to the result of a PCR test or a LCMS test or other technologies, and collaborating with all the players in the field that you may imagine.
Right. Okay. And I mean, you've already touched on it. Because you just mentioned it several times, the market has changed a lot. So, and obviously the whole market has had to move more towards automation and digitalization and more use of IT. Apart from that, how else has the market changed since March?
Well, it's a complex question because there was a significant change in the urgency that is probably not going to last, in the sense that people had to find temporary solutions in order to take care of it.
Yep.
But in this urgency, a lot of needs were clarified and emerged. And I think that they are somehow related with the scale of science. Sometimes I repeat, I'm probably not making justice to life science, that 30 years ago, you are mixing two reagents and looking to the color of a well by eye. And as you know, the complexity today has gone up enormously.
Yeah, sure.
So you detect the new strains of virus very rapidly, and you coordinate the therapies with what you discover essentially in real time. And I think it is this rapidity of change of science that is something will remain in the future. So
Right.
Drug development was always a very long process. And today, we all know it's unthinkable to maintain the same processes that were present in this industry in the past. I'm not even talking about personalized immunotherapies. A lot of people does not know that BioNTech is a cancer technology company. And today we're making a virus vaccine. And so this is incredible. If you would have told 10 years ago that this could happen, nobody would believe it.
No, well, very true, actually. So looking back on the year, what would you say are the key learnings you would take from it? And would there be anything that you would do differently now that you've got hindsight to what you've done earlier in the year?
Well, I have very, very mixed feelings myself, and nobody has the full truth in their hands. I feel at the same time a sense of a tremendous fragility for our industry. So you may imagine, for example, companies like us having just-in-time production chains, and something happening like this, where essentially globally, even transports and so on, etc., starts failing. And so big fragility. At the same time, probably these days, we also have a feeling of tremendous power, because in few months, we were able to find a solution. So there are indeed a lot of reflection. I think it was like sometimes you do in the finance sector, you make a crash test for the banking system. I think this was a crash test for the life science and the tools companies in life science, because we really realized what were the weak points. I think it's not a mystery that even the most basic things, like tips, the tool used in pipettes, that were, considered a commodity, now become a precious thing, And so there is a lot of fragility, but I think that the systems will become much more robust and more powerful in the future.
Brilliant. Well, that's really interesting, actually. You don't think about even those minutiae things that like you said, you take things for granted. I don't think that's just in industry, in life as well. I think everything's become a bit more focused, hasn't it, in terms of what's important, what isn't.
I think to understand is not really our field, that the same is happening now with needles, syringes, vials, and the basic tools that, again, were a commodity 1 year ago and now becomes a strategic asset.
All right. Again, I think it's pretty obvious what you're going to say to this, but looking ahead, I mean, what do you think has changed because of the pandemic and is likely to carry on now into the future and stay for good, if you like?
I think that in the future, and I'm thinking to this year, if you want, forward, automation will have a different role. If you think about in the years 2000, automation came up because of high-throughput screening, especially the screening of existing compounds that were stored in millions in the pharma. And so the need was completely different from the automation we need today. Today, you need to automation in the flexibility of process development, in defining vaccines, in testing, collecting data, and you need to automate all this tremendous chain that goes from ideas to data. And so this is, I think, the automation that is going to dominate the next decades. That is probably nearer to what I call the connected lab, so where devices and software and people communicate all together, more than a machine running and crunching one process in a very fast way, but then all the rest are being disconnected.
Well, that leads very nicely then to my next question, where we start looking ahead to 2021. So what do you see the new normal being then going forward, not just for this year, but obviously in the years ahead?
Yeah, it's just to make a little example, because it's also present, it's public information on the press. I was very surprised when Mammoth Biosciences, a company in our field, was showing that they could have scientists working from home and running experiments in their lab with the help of a technician. And this seems crazy, but it's actually very normal. because you think wherever you are, and you have to produce data in a specific way, and maybe if it is not your lab next door, it will be the lab in a different continent or a different place. So I think there will be a fantastic revolution in life science, because we will start adopting different ways of working. And I think this is what will also make another quantum step for life sciences, because it is true that the science has evolved tremendously in the last decades. But if you go to a lab, you still see people with a pipette in their hand that is somehow that you could see 30 years ago.
True. And what do you see as the key development trends, if you like, going forward now in 2021?
Well, it's I think automated tools and I'll say tools to better cover the complexity of the workflows. It is something that the industry was struggling a lot, you know, but I think because of the acceleration of science, now things have to be done much faster than what it was before. I think tools will be obliging. People will be obliged in changing the tools that they are using in order to take care of it. There is simply no escape. It's like a physicist still trying to do calculation on a piece of paper. Once we had computers, you know, 50 years ago to make the same things much faster and much better. I think it will be the same transition, and I'm really excited to see what will happen in the next years. Because I repeat the example of BioNTech. What they did for the vaccine is what they may do tomorrow or in a few years for cancer and different diseases.
Okay, and one question which we didn't have down on the original list, but because it's quite topical, how has or will Brexit impact the business in terms of going forward?
No, it's very funny because I have to admit that my daughter actually lives in UK, so I'm following the situation very precisely. But you also should be aware that in this moment I'm in Paris, but I also live 200 meters from the borders of Switzerland. I work in Switzerland, but I'm a French resident. And so I cross the border 6 times and I exit Europe 6 times a day, if you want, when I go to work, because I cross the border multiple times going to work. I think that finally all these things have to be managed. There are, of course, rules and the trade exchange rules that are, as a matter of fact, are affecting businesses. However, I can't forget the cultural proximity with UK that we had in Europe since ever, you know. And it's true that it's an island, so technically separated from the continent, but I don't think that there will be dramatic impact on trends that go much beyond the rules and the regulations in in exchanges. You know, said this, I have to say I would have preferred if UK was still part of Europe, because I feel myself to be a European, being somebody of Italian passport, living in France and working in Switzerland. But again, Switzerland is not in Europe. So I'm still very positive that the future will be bright and, you know, in a couple of hours, Rizwan, we could meet probably more easily than going to any other European city or place.
Well, I hope so, and I look forward to that as well, Piero. So finally, what message would you like to leave those people watching now, both from your customers, your prospective customers, your employees, and other people watching? What message would you like to give them for 2021?
Look, I'm probably always very ambitious, but I could start with a newly coined word that is LSIT. I think that the combination of IT with life science and the level that life science has reached in understanding ourselves is fantastic. And to say that if you really, and you know, you mentioned 2021, but probably I'm looking even forward and being more visionary. Life science has a tremendous challenge in terms of complexity, in the sense that we could even question if you have the complexity of understanding ourselves. Actually, there is a theorem called Ashby theorem saying that a system, to understand another one, has to be more complex. And so we need an extra complexity scale in order to advance in life science. And having a background in physics, as I said before, I do believe that this complexity may come from IT, in the sense that you see that cloud computing and the scale and the capacity of computing is growing, not exponentially, but is growing very, very fast. And I think the combination of the two could really open up new opportunities for mankind, simply.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for that. Well, everyone, I hope you found that interesting. It's always great to catch up with you, Piero. You've always got lots of great ideas as well. So thank you for sharing those. Um, I forgot to ask you, you guys do have a presence at SLAS, don't you, this year as well?
We do, definitely.
Fantastic. So if you're attending SLAS virtual, then make sure you do check out the Andrew Alliance booth, which is going to be part of the Walters booth, and you can catch up with Piero there. I'll also put the link to the website. You can find out more about that there. And if you've got any questions for Piero, then feel free to put them in the comments. We'd love to get your views. What do you think about Piero's new coined phrase, LSIT? Will you be using that, and do you agree with that? Or have you got ideas of your own what you think the future will be for life sciences?
Invented during our course, so you can use it as much as you want.
It's not copyrighted, so that's good. Good to hear. So Piero, all I'd say is thank you very much for taking the time out. I know you're a very busy man, so I really appreciate you taking time to talk to me today.
Everyone, and Happy New Year to everybody.
Thank you. And as Piero said, Happy New Year to everyone. I hope you all have a fantastic, healthy, happy and successful 2021 going forward. And until next time, as always, stay well and stay safe. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Rizwan.